Well, it appears that the reading slump is over. Smashed to Smithereens by Leigh Brackett. Okay, so Leigh Brackett is a very famous author, kind of an iconic figure in some ways in science fiction because she was nicknamed the Queen of Space Opera in her early years. And she was a friend and mentor of Ray Bradbury, which is how I first really noticed her name. So I had heard about her name in passing, but then I got really interested in her once I started getting more knowledgeable about Ray Bradbury's past. And she's kind of an interesting figure because she's written all this sort of early space opera stuff, and she's written Along Tomorrow, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But she also wrote the scripts for Rio Bravo and The Big Sleep, and infamously wrote the first draft of The Empire Strikes Back, the second Star Wars film. But sadly, when The Empire Strikes Back got a Hugo Award for screenplay, it was actually a posthumous award because sadly she died before she managed to see that happen. But regardless of that, so a very big name in science fiction, very important name in science fiction, and this book, Along Tomorrow, was brought out in 1955. And 1955 was around the time of the height of the Cold War, and this is a post-nuclear war environment. So post-nuclear story, and I had known that, but I'd kind of forgotten about it, ignored the cover, didn't read the back again when I wanted to read it again, and luckily, because my brain is a bit of a sieve, I went in blind. So I did know some bits about it a little while ago, but when I started reading it, I went in blind, and I'm so glad I did. So I don't want to tell you too much about the plot, so that if you want to go in blind, you can. So I'm going to tell you some bits of the plot, but hopefully not too much. But I will tell you now that there are lots of pluses here. I think this is an absolutely amazing book. It's completely blown me away. It's definitely a 5-star read, but I'll tell you why, because obviously not just giving you a number, it doesn't really help. But I think the characterization is fantastic in it. The two main characters are really characterized well, but actually a couple of other main characters are also characterized really well. And it's beautiful writing. You can see why Ray Bradbury took a lot of inspiration from her. And, that follows on for the other authors that have been influenced by Ray and her and all that kind of thing. So the prose style is really brilliant. It's beautifully written. There's just enough poetry in the prose to have this lovely joy of language, but it's also extremely well paced so that it's compelling all the way through it. Every single page keeps you guessing, keeps you wanting to know more of the story, keeps you wanting to know what happens next, where they go next, because there's a bit of an exploration part of this. They go on a journey, and you're wondering where this journey is going to lead. There's also an element that she frequently does little hints about what's going to happen in the future. So she'll finish a chapter with a sentence that's not quite fully explained until later, and there's this sort of teasing what happens later, which is really well done. It's a really good idea and brilliantly done. And the setting reveals itself quite slowly over the first few chapters, which is really good. I think that's good when that happens. If it's revealed over 100 pages, it's a bit naff, but it reveals itself over a few quite short chapters. And these chapters are quite short, but it's interesting because at the end of each chapter, something has happened. So the fact that there is, like, I don't know, is it 20 odd chapters, 30 odd chapters? How many chapters is there? 30 chapters. There's lots of things that happen. There's lots of incidents that move the plot along. There's lots of landmark moments in the story. And that's when she tends to... There's only a couple of times when the chapter will still be in the same scene and the same conversation. Most of the time it's because it's like a scene break and something else has happened. And I will say also it's the perfect size. So as I said, the way it's written, it's utterly compelling all the way through it. But I do think that that's also because of how she's written it, that it's long enough to explore the characters and the plot really well, to the point where you're intrigued about what's happening without it being revealed too quickly, and the world building is done really well, and the last chapter makes a lot more sense because of the time it's taken to explore the philosophical themes and the ethical themes in the plot. So I think the length of it's really good, but the shortness of it's really good as well, because nothing's wasted. There's no fluff in it. There's no moment when you're just thinking, oh, I can't get on with it. There's none of that happening here, and it's beautiful. It's because it's so brilliantly written. But the pace is a really important thing, I think. So there we are. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, because hopefully it won't be like I'm spoiling the journey, but I feel like it's a bit of a review with a huge hole in it if I don't say something about what it's about. So the book opens with establishing two characters, pretty much, Len Coulter and his cousin Esau, and the two of them are clearly in this a Mennonite society, very agrarian society that you don't know straight away that it's a post-nuclear society. You just see it as a society where electricity is shunned. And by the way, one of the things I discovered when I was looking into her, that she did live near an Amish community. So obviously the Mennonite community and the Amish community both shun modern technology, and they live without all those trappings, and Leigh Brackett has kind of set that world as the kind of result of this post-nuclear situation. So I think that's kind of clever in a way that it's kind of inevitable and realistic, and quite astute to think that those communities would be able to cope with that kind of thing better. But anyway, Len Coulter and Esau Coulter, his cousin, are quite quickly established as two principal characters, and they're very curious, and they've heard about this fair that's happening where these traders are going to come along, and there's this rumor of these preachers that are going to be there, and they want to sneak away and find out what this preaching is going to be about, even though they're going to get into trouble if they go there. But they're very determined, they're very curious. Curiosity is a huge part of this book. Certainly the first two parts is like split into three parts. But the first two parts definitely about curiosity, and then the third part's the payoff. But they are very, very curious. They're kind of obsessively curious through the book, but they're very curious, and they want to know what's happening with this preacher, what this is going to be about. And then they very excitedly sneak off. And there's kind of shades. It really reminded me of the beginning of Something Wicked This Way Comes. Again, another Ray Bradbury reference, but I couldn't help but notice it, partly also knowing that they were friends and she was a mentor to his early writing and all that. But when they sneak off to the fairground in Something Wicked This Way Comes, it kind of just reminded me of that. And that is one of my favourite books. So anyway, they sneak off to this big traders fair where there's going to be this preacher's going to be there. But they are really shocked to see what happens. And I don't want to tell you what happens because it's quite shocking to the reader as well. And that sets off this new perspective on what's going on. And Len and Esau are very curious about what that means, what they've just witnessed, because it's quite extreme what they've witnessed. And they want to learn more about what's going on. And that just results in them getting punished for even asking the question. It's a very archaic society that they are being grown up in, and that really doesn't deter them. They're even more determined after being punished for asking the questions. Then they get punished even more. It's quite brutal, some of the things in the early part of the book, has to be said. And they decide they need to run away, and through running away, they discover a bigger world, more ethical questions, more relationships. One of the early relationships they have in the book before they run away, becomes fruitful in a different way. See, I'm trying not to spoil things here. And that relationship becomes really important later on. And it's just all driven, the whole thing is driven by this fantastic world building she's doing of this post-nuclear society. These two kids that are more than kids by the end of it, but they are trying to discover what the hell's going on. And ultimately, I'm going to find it here, the 30th Amendment of the new Constitution of the United States. It says, no city, no town, no community, or more than 1,000 people or 200 buildings to the square mile shall be built or permitted to exist anywhere in the United States of America. I'll say it again. No city, no town, or no community of more than 1,000 people or 200 buildings in the square mile shall be built or permitted to exist. So the law is now saying that these big communities can't exist. And I actually did want to end with a part of the introduction. There's a really good introduction to this copy, the SF Masterworks copy by Pat Cadigan. And I wanted to read a part of it because it just shows you what's going on here. So, where are we? George Lucas kicked science fiction cinema into high gear in May 1977 with Star Wars. More precisely, Episode 4, A New Hope. Well, it was called Star Wars when it came out, mate. The entire sold-out theatre cheered the opening narrative scrolling upward, which told us that we had come upon a story in progress. I personally thought Lucas was honouring the ancient storytelling tradition of beginning an epic in the middle. We could hardly wait for the next instalment, which happened to be written by Leigh Brackett. We were all pretty thrilled about that too. Leigh Brackett was one of ours. Hardcore print SF fans knew her as the queen of the pulps. She'd already written space opera like The Big Jump and The Starmen of Leodis. They're kind of, I get the impression, I haven't read them yet, but I get the impression they're like Princess of Mars, Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of pulpy science fiction. But her first published book was actually a hard-boiled private eye novel called No Good for a Corpse, which I've got over there, which I'm going to read soon, I think. Its noir sensibility attracted Howard Hawks, who insisted that someone get this guy Brackett in to work on the script for a movie called The Big Sleep. Leigh Brackett had a lot of range, and you can read all about her other work online in her entry in the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction. I can tell you that she was a lovely woman who enjoyed the company of other science fiction writers and readers. She and her husband, Edward Hamilton, were regular attendees at conventions in the Midwestern US and at the annual World Science Fiction conventions for most of their professional lives. But I was talking about her range, which shows here in particular. The Long Tomorrow is a departure from hard-boiled private eye noir, from space opera, and from Martian adventure stories, from the science fantasy that she enjoyed writing so much. This novel is set in a near future that no longer exists in our particular timeline, but which you may find disturbingly familiar anyway. And I'll just bounce off that to say that I think it does explore themes that are still relevant today. Explores the hold that religion could have on society and could have on the laws and the ethics of a particular community. I think that's a really important discussion in the book. A really important discussion, especially now, because people don't seem to be taking it very seriously, and that's the threat of nuclear war and the danger of nuclear weapons. That's also been discussed in this book. And I think in general, that idea of curiosity and knowledge and how important it is to be honest with the community and not just stamp down on someone trying to find out the truth about something. I think that's an important, relevant thing now. In 1955, when this book was published, many people in the US mistakenly believed that there could and would be survivors after a nuclear war. So you'll have to suspend your disbelief on that score. But once you do, you'll find that Long Tomorrow is no cozy catastrophe, nor are there any deformed mutants with superpowers or strange viruses that cause the dead to rise and shamble around in search of brains to eat. Instead, we have a United States where people live in small villages under religious rule because the 30th Amendment to the Constitution makes it a federal offence to have a city with a population of more than 1,000 residents, which I just covered a minute ago. Radio, television, even electricity itself is banned as sinful, the sort of thing that could bring down the Lord's wrath in another terrible war. Steam engines running on coal and wood are only permitted for the boats that carry traders from one village to another. And God help the out-of-towner who looks like he might have something forbidden in his wagon, because the wages of sin is death. No exceptions and no appeal. And yeah, they're all going towards this place. A lot of the thread of the plot is that Len and Esau, his cousin, are trying to find Barterstown, which is this sort of mythical place where there's more freedom, there's more honesty, there's much more references to things that they've lost after the nuclear war that they think might still exist. Barterstown. And I think it's interesting. I haven't seen this written anywhere, but I do think it's interesting that the word Barterstown is the name for this more modern reference to the old ways, because I feel like Barterstown is a reference to bartering, trading, consumerism, capitalism. Capitalism is like a sign of modern life in a lot of ways, isn't it? And I feel like she may have called it Barterstown, like capitalist town. I don't know. But one of the great things about this book is that you're all the way through the book, you're wondering what's going to happen if and when they do find Barterstown. Does it exist? If it does exist, is it what they think it is? And it's such a good, it's a fantastic third act where all that kind of thing is explored. I won't tell you whether they find it. I won't tell you what it is that they are looking for. And hopefully you'll read this, because it really is a fantastic book. So I'm really pleased because I've had this for a while, and because she's such a big figure in Ray Bradbury's life, I really wanted to like it, and it really was fantastic. I really did like it a lot. So The Long Tomorrow by Leigh Brackett is absolutely thoroughly recommended. So check it out if you can. Thanks a lot for watching. Stay curious, everybody.
Paint me a picture